today. The atmosphere was both electric and positive, and the organization amidst such numbers and activity was stunning as well. I think we wanted to deliver a simple message that the American people and the United States Senate stands with the Ukrainian people. We expect there to be change, and we know there's debate about what that change needs to be, but we certainly believe at the heart of it is a Ukrainian future with Europe, and we've been delivering a consistent message all day today, and I know Senator McCain was yesterday, that we're ready to do what it takes to help Ukraine join Europe now and into the future.
A remarkable historic event, and it's really, honestly, a very great pleasure and honor to observe this. There are many aspects of it that are very interesting, but one of the, I think, important factors is that young people are generally in the vanguard of these protests, and it'll be young people that will have to remain involved after this part of the effort is through.
So did you get, if you were to distill what they want from what you've heard from the opposition, the civic activists on the streets, what would you say their main requirements are?
Their focus is the Ukrainian membership in the European Union. But that goal is really many factors. The corruption, which they are tired of, the beating of the demonstrators, heavy-handed mistreatment of the demonstrators a few weeks ago was a very uniting factor. A very charismatic leader amongst others, Mr. Klitschko, a world-renowned boxer who has attracted a lot of support. But I think that the object is immediate, is a membership in the European Union. But they don't want corruption. They know the economy has suffered enormously, and they have borne the brunt of it. And so all of this is sort of focused. The point of the spear is membership in the EU. But what's behind it is a lot of other factors, including dissatisfaction with the economy that has stagnated literally for a long time.
I just will remark, we just met with a group of students, and one of the students said, this is about dignity. And that comes in different forms. There's economic dignity, there's personal dignity, there's civic dignity. But Europe represents an assurance that there will be a rule of law, that there will be an expectation of being treated in a certain way. And so that was interesting.
A reduction in corruption.
A reduction in corruption. And so, dignity comes in different forms, but, that clearly is something that unites people and draws them to Europe rather than the other way.
Well, it's true that the oligarchs are a very most important factor in whether this whole effort will succeed or not. There is varying degrees of support from these oligarchs, from all-out support to distance and everything in between. Some of them, to be frank, their attitude is dictated by what they think the chances of this movement succeeding is. And then there's others who realize that membership in the European Union gives them much greater opportunity for economic growth and job creation than being associated with Russia. So I'm generally pleased with the attitude of most of the oligarchs. Some of them have drawn a clear separation between themselves and the president, but obviously we'd like to see a lot more of that.
I think a lot of these guys are capped out in terms of how much they can grow simply within the bounds of the Ukraine. And Russia doesn't, offer an enormous, Russia doesn't offer the kind of potential for growth that the European Union does. And I think there's, a concern about the rule of law, which seems to be slipping away day after day as more economic power gets consolidated in the hands of people close to the regime. And so I think the Senator's right. There's been a variety of reaction, and I don't claim to know what the key is to change that. I'm not sure that the United States holds that key, to be honest. But I would agree. I was generally pleased to hear many of their reactions.
These oligarchs, first and foremost, are business people. They see Russia, the world's 13th largest economy, and they see the European Union, the world's largest economy. So it's pretty clear what their ultimate choice is probably going to be, if they think they can succeed, this movement can succeed.
So what do you think would tip them over?
I think some of them are tipping already. I think that one of the key elements is going to be to reinforce them tipping over is the path to membership in the European Union, which we understand today is not progressing.
Where do you see the U.S. role in the processes that are happening in Ukraine now? You express full support to the people who are rallying and demonstrating for their rights, but what else can the U.S. do apart from that?
Well, the path to financial solvency for Ukraine has to run through the IMF. Ultimately, Russia may be able to provide a short-term solution, but can't provide the kind of long-term stability that a relationship with the IMF and Europe can. I think the United States can be helpful in negotiating the conditions of that loan, but it's nearly impossible to do that given the current uncertainty as to the association agreement. The United States can be enormously helpful in continuing to develop energy independence for Ukraine. We already have some of our biggest energy companies here, and that becomes easier to support for the United States Congress if there's a movement towards Europe. And so there's enormous financial and energy cooperation that can continue to happen. That's a start.
We're still the most admired nation, at least in Ukraine. Thousands and thousands of students have received their education in the United States. There's very close ties with the Ukrainian diaspora in the United States. And they do look to us. And they, from what I understand, they admire the United States and they want our moral support. I thought Secretary John Kerry's message was a very powerful one, and it was very well received here. Victoria Nuland, I also think was very good. Our ambassador here does an outstanding job. Frankly, I would like to see the president speak up on behalf, and I think he may. And the other aspect from a more practical standpoint is that if there is an aid package from the European Union, I think the United States is and would be prepared to assist in that financial bridge that they need now, given the really serious economic conditions and budgetary conditions that exist.
Would that be a separate package from the European, or would you chip in on the European package?
I think it depends. I think, first of all, I would think the easiest way is to contribute to the European package, but I would leave that up to the situation at the time.
You just believe that there's political will to help financially?
Yes, there is.
Another part of the message that has been coming from the US quite consistently over the past week or so is that sanctions are a new word in fashion. So how real is that threat?
Senator Murphy has been a leader on this, given his position in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and others of us have joined with him. we want to be very careful about it because we don't want to just willy-nilly threaten it. But at the same time, we want to send the message that if repression and abuse of human rights continues, then the United States Congress, in a bipartisan fashion, would examine the options that are entailed in sanctions. But I want to emphasize that that's our last act, not our first. And we want to give every opportunity for this system to work, and a better government, and all the things that the people are now in the square agitating for.
We think we have a lot to offer Ukraine in its path towards Europe, and that's really our message. And we heard consistently from the government today that they regret the aggressive actions on the square, that they have begun the steps to hold people accountable, and that there will be no further violent episodes on the square precipitated by government authorities. And we take them at their word. If that word holds, there won't be a need to discuss sanctions, but we just feel that we have to make it clear that if the rule of law is not upheld, then it's our responsibility to look at the options available to us to answer the concerns of the people we represent.
And one thing I am sure of, it would not only be bipartisan, but it would be Congress and the administration working together.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to go back to the issue of trust that you were saying, that the president is giving a promise, is saying that there's going to be no violence. But when Victoria Nuland was here on the 10th of December, he gave her exact same promise. And at the same time, we had a document leaked already from our security services that showed that they extended all the emergency situation preparations, martial law, basically, preparations, until the 31st of December on that very day. And they were preparing for to use force. So how can you trust the president in these kind of circumstances?
Well, I mean, that's why we're making it very clear that if the trust is violated, there could be consequences. I mean, I can't, I don't think we can make it any more clear than that.
And we would rely on the leaders of the opposition for their judgment to some degree.
The U.S. did a lot to investigate our former Prime Minister, Pavlo Lazarenko, and his assets in the U.S. and the money laundering operations and so on. Many people are wondering in Ukraine whether you would be willing, at any point, the U.S. would be willing to do the same for our president and his family, who are believed to be living off corruption.
I'd be reluctant to make that judgment at this time. I think it's something that is much better to give some time, because too often there is a change in government and people are thrown in jail. For example, both of us favor Yulia Tymoshenko being allowed to go to Germany for medical treatment. So before we would make a judgment like that, I think the most important thing is to have the transition take place and not the threats or aspects of it that may impede that transition.
So we ultimately have faith in the democratic power of this country. People are unhappy with the way that the country is going, and they will have multiple opportunities to express that in the political process. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to reinforce today, is that while we support many of the ambitions that are expressed on the square, we also want to make it clear that democracy and elections are the way that you can best carry out the will of the people.
I would like to ask you a geopolitical sort of question. What do you think is Mr. Putin's role is in the events in Ukraine?
I believe that Mr. Putin has put pressure throughout the perimeter of Russia, ranging from Moldova, having occupied parts of Georgia, Lithuania, the Baltic countries, and I believe that Mr. Putin believes that Ukraine is a vital part of his near abroad. And I'd be very concerned about what action he takes to try to harm the Ukrainian economy or punish the Ukrainian people, or other actions which could be harmful to what is being sought right now as we speak. So I'm very concerned about what actions Mr. Putin may take, particularly given the actions he's taken here in the past.
Technical. About 24 of those
The needed reforms and new elections. What role he plays in that, I think it's something that, frankly, I shouldn't be dictating.
Do you think he should resign?
I don't know. I think, how all this turns out. You and I had been discussing it last week. We might have had a different view than we have today.
Well, what's your view today?
My view today is that I'd like to leave it up to the people and those who make this revolution, this protest a reality. And so I think it's almost a bit presumptuous of me to tell them exactly what they should do. For me to parachute in and tell them what to do. You've got a pretty big ego, but not that big. Okay.